So this is your first book. I mean, a huge congratulations. First book, straight into Netflix. It's absolutely brilliant. How does it feel to finally have it out there in the real world as opposed to just a manuscript?
I'm still sort of getting used to it, but I think I'm more just excited to have it in the hands of readers, especially the people who are going to, I think, appreciate the content the most. You know, it's a book about love, violence, and the physics of time travel that just so happens to take place in Beckham. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who are interested in at least one of those angles. So yeah, just really interested to see what the reaction is and how people enjoy the book.
So, I mean, Femi, in your first sort of life, as it were, you're a quantum physicist. But have you always enjoyed writing then? I mean, what were you doing before this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's a couple questions in there. I'll answer the first one about sort of writing. The answer is definitely no. I learned how to write in order to write this book, actually. So it's sort of almost about 3 years ago now, when I sort of quit the quantum physics theory side of stuff and went into the real world of working, and spent a long time, almost on my weekends, constantly reading books. What would happen actually is, maybe I'll be having drinks with a mate or some place, and people would ask me about quantum physics or relativity, and I'd give a sort of 2 to 5 minute explanation, and inevitably, regardless of whether the person was really interested in physics or not at all, the reaction was always like, "Oh wow, that's insane," because ultimately I'm talking about things that relate to the world that we live in, right? Physicists talk about the natural world, and the question would always be, where can I read more? Where can I find out more? And I always just struggled a little bit to find to find a recommendation, to find a book that they would understand, but more importantly, because there's plenty of people out there who are smarter than me who've written great books on the physics of time travel or quantum mechanics. But I think the tricky part is giving people a reason to give a damn in the first place. And so that's when I got the idea that sort of you could take these concepts, and wrap them in a narrative, give somebody a character like Esso, like Ria, someone who they instantly want to root for and want to go along this journey with. And that would be a great way to sort of almost hide the physics within that as a sort of bonus thing. And so I thought, okay, I've got to write this thing. It's not out there. And so I just started reading books about how to write, and then started writing out of that process. And so I actually found it quite fun. I think I'm a bit of one of those kind of weird. I'm always kind of lifelong learner, for lack of a better term. So I found it quite fun, kind of just taking on a challenge, and I approached writing probably more like a physicist than a scientist and a creative, if I'm being honest, and kind of broke down a lot of the systems that work. I mean, writing, like almost everything, is something you learn versus something you're born with or not. And so that was a valuable thing to learn as well.
So maybe your next will be how to write a book by a physicist. That would be quite funny, wouldn't it? What I'm saying?
Yeah.
All broken down nicely in a sort of methodical way.
Yeah,
So,
no, there's an idea there.
well, I'll have a 10% of that then. So you spoke a little bit there about your inspiration, from a kind of physics point of view. But what about the characters? Where did the inspiration from the characters come from?
Yeah, so writing is such an interesting process. One of the first books I read about writing was Stephen King's book on writing. And he kind of gives some very plain advice, which is just sort of like, for your first draft, the biggest barrier is self-doubt. So just write as fast as you can, because the only 2 words that really matter are the end. And so I went into it, and the reason why I'm saying this is because I just kind of wrote, and a lot of this stuff comes from your subconscious. So I was just designing this character Esso, and then also looking at how to craft Ria's character, and most of it kind of just flowed out. Some of it is from my life in the sense that, in order to get the voice, I both talked the way that I might talk in a conversation, and thought the way that I might want to think in a situation as well. And then just stories that happened to me and people around me. And so it was quite organic. It wasn't a super structured process. It was only when I was editing and trying to improve the sort of the character, the qualities, and make certain things clear that I started thinking about it in a more structured way. But yeah, I think the best writing, the better words comes from your subconscious, to be honest. And so, yeah, that's mostly how it came about.